The odds of winning the lottery are 1 in 292 million. This ratio is so small that most people don't even think of taking a chance. But not this guy. This Romanian accountant didn't just beat the lottery once or twice. That'd be child's play. He hit the jackpot 14 times. How, you ask? Well, he cracked the lottery code and turned those 1 in 292 million odds into 1 in several thousand. Do you want to know how he did it? Well, let's see. This is the story of Stefan Mandel, the mastermind who hacked the lottery. The first win. The 1960s in Romania were not exactly the ideal time period to be alive, especially for a cash-strapped accountant like Stefan Mandel. Imagine living in a country under the tight grip of communist rule, and that too on a minimum wage. Mandel was stuck there. He was earning a meager 360 lei a month, which is barely $10 in today's money. While others in his shoes might have turned to illegal paths to make ends meet, Mandel, a self-proclaimed philosopher-mathematician, had a different game plan: the lottery. Now, hold up. The lottery? That sounds like a fast track to nowhere, right? I mean, you've got better odds of getting an Olympic gold or surviving a vending machine attack. But you're just thinking that because you don't know this. Mandel was not your average Joe. This guy was a number wizard. He was a determined accountant who decided to use his skills. Mandel spent millions of his seconds poring over ancient mathematics papers by Leonardo Fibonacci. After years buried in research, Mandel came up with a killer algorithm, a hack he called combinatorial condensation. He had it all figured out. In a 49-ball lottery, he could almost predict 5 out of 6 winning numbers. By choosing 15 numbers and covering every combo, his odds of winning jumped from 1 in nearly 14 mil to 1 in 2,794. And with his algorithm, he brought those combinations down to just 569. So Mandel shared his secret with 4 of his friends, and together they bought lottery tickets. Each one of them bought 228 tickets per draw. It was a bold move, high stakes and all that. Either they were gonna win big or lose all the money they had left. But guess what? It worked. They hit the jackpot and won about 19 grand. After paying off his crew and covering expenses, Mandel received $4,000. That amount was his ticket out of Romania. And what did our gutsy accountant do? Well, he took that win, bribed some people at the foreign ministry, and left Romania for good. But he wasn't done yet. He had his eyes on a bigger prize, and this first win was just the beginning. The new lottery business. After his big win, Stefan Mandel finally had the means to leave Romania. Being Jewish, he initially set his sights on Israel. Imagine finally breaking free from the grip of communist Romania and starting anew. That's exactly what Mandel did, but he didn't stay there for long. He soon left Israel. Then he kept moving to different countries in Europe. After about 4 years, he landed in Australia, a place that had a strong economy and a reasonable cost of living. It was the perfect place for his next big move. Settling down in Australia, Mandel and his family embraced their new life. And with his new Australian citizenship, he gained access to a whole new world of opportunities, including the British Commonwealth's lotteries. Think of it as the golden ticket to the UK's lottery systems. We know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking that the UK National Lottery didn't even start until 1994. So how was Mandel planning to win it? Well, you're right. The National Lottery did not exist at that time, but that's not the only kind of lottery that's played in the country, right? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. The UK had a rich history of lotteries long before the 90s. From the Million Adventure Lottery in 1694 to the smaller private lotteries legalized in the 1930s, 50s, and 70s, the UK was no stranger to the game. And Mandel, with his sharp mind and new citizenship, was ready to win these. The best part was that his strategy was a perfect fit for these games with fewer winning combinations. Mandel didn't waste any time. He started laying the groundwork for what would become a unique lottery business. But this time, he switched up his strategy. he ditched complex algorithms to predict winning numbers. Instead, he focused on acquiring as many tickets as possible. It was a simpler yet equally brilliant plan. He began recruiting people to buy and submit tickets across Australia. It was the perfect business. Mandel's team even had a system for carefully storing ticket receipts. Once a winning ticket was identified among his collection, his team would claim the prize with the corresponding receipt. You can only imagine what was happening in Mandel's life at that point. Winning tickets being claimed, Mandel's operation distributing the winnings among his investors, Mandel receiving the remaining cash. It was a win-win for everyone involved. Mandel had transformed from a desperate man trying to feed his family into a lottery mastermind, orchestrating a large-scale operation across continents. It would be wrong to call him lucky, because his scheme was carefully planned, calculated, and strategic, which placed him at the forefront of lottery innovation. But this wasn't his limit. For Mandel, this was just the beginning of a much larger story, one where the stakes would get even higher and the wins even bigger. The Big Australian Gamble. Let's have a look at Stefan Mandel's trick for winning the lotteries in Australia. You see, in a standard lottery, you pick numbers, and if they match the drawn ones, you hit the jackpot. It's simple, right? But the odds are usually sky high, often in the millions. Mandel, however, noticed something unique. In some lotteries, the jackpot jumps to over 3 times the cost of buying every possible number combination. For example, consider a lottery where you choose 6 numbers from 1 to 40. This setup has 3,838,380 possible combinations. Now, say the jackpot is $10 million. In theory, Mandel could buy a ticket for every combination at $1 each, guaranteeing a win and, after taxes, a tidy profit. This wasn't rocket science. Any high schooler with a basic knowledge of math could crunch these numbers. But of course, there were hurdles. Where would he get the funds? And how on earth would he fill out hundreds of thousands of tickets? This is where Mandel got his investors. Over the years, he persuaded hundreds of people to contribute to a lotto syndicate. He then set up a system of computers and printers that could automatically generate every number combination. So, yes, the invention of computers was a game changer for Mandel. Gone were the days of manually writing out millions of combinations, where a single error could waste months of work. Throughout the 80s, Mandel and his syndicate played a waiting game. They would spring into action when a jackpot was triple the cost of buying all combinations. Then buy tickets by the thousands. And don't you worry, it was all legal. Back then, there were no rules against buying that many tickets. Mandel even went to the Australian lottery officials and told them straight up about his plan. But they couldn't do anything about it, since what he was doing was totally legal. Mandel successfully won the lottery 12 times in Australia. In fact, this one time, he won 1.1 mil in 1986. He also won 400 grand and other smaller prizes. But after each win, the officials threw new rules at Mandel to stop him from winning. First, a law was passed against one person buying all lottery tickets. Mandel's response was that he partnered up with 5 people. Then came a law against groups buying all tickets. Mandel's workaround here was that he started a lottery firm. After his 13th win, and that's including his first in Romania, the Australian authorities just had enough. They changed the laws, making it impossible for Mandel or anyone to cover every combination. You would think that was the end of Mandel's lottery adventure, right? Wrong. Mandel was not done yet. He decided it was time for a grander stage. He set his sights on a prize so big it would stun the world and leave lottery officials scratching their heads. And just when it seemed like he was out of the game, he turned his attention to another country. The Virginia Lottery. After Australia, Stefan Mandel focused on the United States. Why? Well, it's simple. The US didn't have any rules against someone buying up the whole lottery. But with many lotteries to choose from, Mandel needed the perfect pick. This is when he chose Virginia, the golden goose of his plan. Virginia's lottery was as unpredictable as it could be. But it had some perks. First of all, it was new. Then tickets could be printed at home, and best of all, the number range was only 1 to 44. That's a mere 7.1 million combinations. Compared to the 25 million in other states, this was a walk in the park. And with tickets just $1 each, Mandel knew he would hit the jackpot even before winning it. Now, the real challenge was raising the 7.1 mil to buy every single combination. Mandel made a genius move there. He set up a trust called the International Lotto Fund under Pacific Financial Resources and convinced 2,560 people to invest in it. Each one bought a 10-year life insurance policy, and voila, there was his lottery money. Next, he set the headquarters of his operation. He set up a warehouse in Melbourne, filled it with 30 computers, 12 laser printers, and 16 dedicated employees churning out millions of tickets. 3 months, 1 ton of paper, and $60,000 later, those tickets are on their way to the US. Mandel was waiting for the perfect moment, the jackpot sweet spot where the win outweighs the cost. That's the art of the gamble, timing it just right. Virginia's lottery jackpot starts small and grows with each draw. Mandel was just waiting for it to explode. Finally, 2 years later, in 1992, the jackpot hit a jaw-dropping $27 million. It was go time. Mandel's team sprang into action, and the man leading the charge was Anatoly Alex. Mandel hired him to charm the store owners and get his way. This person, wearing a gold Rolex and a safari suit, had a charm that could sell sand in the desert. Alex was fresh out of bankruptcy, so he needed the money. This is why he was trying to pull something quite impossible. But surprisingly, they were succeeding. In just 72 hours, they had bought 1.4 million tickets, paid for and also processed. They even had couriers, 35 of them, accountants by trade, fanning out across Virginia. They were hitting every store they could. Gas stations, supermarkets, you name it. It was a total frenzy. Locals were scratching their heads as these couriers flooded their stores with stacks of tickets and piles of cash. Store owners were initially skeptical, but they couldn't help but get caught up in the excitement. They thought this team was nuts. But hey, who turns away a customer buying 700K lottery tickets, right? But just as they were nearing the finish line, disaster struck. One of the chains backed out, leaving 140,000 tickets. That's 700,000 combinations unprocessed. The clock was ticking, and Mandel's foolproof plan was suddenly hanging by a thread. It was no longer just about playing the system. Now it was down to luck, the only element that other people relied on when playing the lottery. On the day of the draw, Mandel's team managed to process 1.24 mil of their 1.4 million tickets. It was a staggering number, but it was still not complete. The dream of a guaranteed win was slipping away. Now, like any other person playing the lottery, Mandel's fate rests in the hands of chance. So, did he win? Well, as a matter of fact, he did. On February 15th, as the numbers rolled out on live TV, Anatoly Alex and his team were in their warehouse holding their breath. Then, the moment of truth. A win. The room erupted in euphoria. They had won the $27 million jackpot. Back in Australia, Mandel sent a message to his 2,524 investors. We entered and won. Their victory, a staggering $27 million plus $900K in secondary prizes, was to be paid over 20 years. But as they soon discovered, the Virginia lottery officials had different ideas. What seemed like a smooth road to riches was about to hit an unexpected twist. What became of the mastermind? Once Mandel won that 27 mil, his win sparked a heated debate. Virginia's lottery rules said you had to pay for tickets where you got them, but Mandel's crew bypassed that by buying them directly with store owners. This raised some eyebrows. Were those tickets even legit? Kenneth W. Thorson, the Virginia State Lottery Commissioner at the time, smelled something fishy with Mandel's win. But after a deep dive into their methods, he found that Mandel's team had played by the rules. Can you imagine the relief? However, this win put Mandel under the microscope of 14 international agencies. This included the CIA and FBI. Imagine that scrutiny. Yet after all that probing, neither Mandel nor his international lotto fund were found guilty of any wrongdoing. Back in Australia, Mandel became a bit of a legend. He was celebrated in the media as a clever rogue who outsmarted the American system. After the investigation, Thorson acknowledged Mandel's ingenuity. He jokingly hoped they would never see him again in the US. Mandel took this to heart. It was his last American lottery stunt. When the dust settled, each investor, from housekeepers to doctors, received about $1.4K. Not everyone was thrilled, though. Some investors felt shortchanged, calling Mandel a liability rather than a hero. Mandel himself? Well, he received a whopping $1.7 million as a consultant fee, and then traded his 20-year payout for a quick $14 million. After expenses, he still received quite a big check. Next thing you know, Mandel was funneling cash into a Hong Kong account, and then radio silence. By 1995, we got to know the guy went bankrupt. He was also dabbling in various ventures, and one of those landed him a jail sentence in Israel. However, his attorney claimed the conviction was overturned, and he spent only 10 months in prison. Today, Mandel is in Vanuatu, living a quiet life, far from his lottery days. And Anatoly Alex, his one-time sidekick, is also living a low-key life in Illinois. Now, what about Mandel's winning formula? He didn't share it with the world. But do you want to replicate his strategy? Stay with us till the end of the video. Can you replicate his strategy? Unfortunately, if you're dreaming of replicating Stefan Mandel's legendary lottery strategy, you're out of luck. Pulling off a Mandel today would be a Herculean task because the landscape of lotteries has changed drastically, making his approach virtually infeasible. Let us tell you why. First off, the number of possible combinations in lotteries has skyrocketed. Take the Oregon Megabucks, for example. In this lottery, your chances of hitting the jackpot are 1 in over 6 million. And if you're opting for bigger games like the US Powerball or Mega Millions, the odds stretch even further to 1 in 292 million. Another major roadblock? The days of printing your own tickets are long gone. Plus, even if you could, buying every single ticket before the draw is a logistical nightmare. And that's not even touching on the monumental task of devising a flawless formula like Mandel did. In plain terms, it's pretty much impossible to replicate Mandel's magic in today's lottery world. The only way to play now is the old-fashioned way, picking your numbers and crossing your fingers. Unless, of course, you have a groundbreaking plan up your sleeve that outshines Mandel's. But if that were the case, you'd probably be soaking up the sun on a South Pacific island, not watching videos about lotteries, right? We can't give you Mandel's trick, but we can definitely tell you some secret ways to increase your chance of winning Powerball. If you're interested, make sure to watch our next video.